I want to ask you about something that Lawrence Wright references. I think he uses the phrase noble cause corruption. That's something that starts out as potentially a good idea, can become very dark and very twisted very easily. So if we step back and agree that what happened to the triplets was horrific, was there a noble cause there? Was there some interesting science that was being explored, and how did it go off the rails?
It's a really good question. It's for me, it's at the heart of the film. It's why do good people sometimes do bad things? Because these scientists, they're not bad people. You know, they're really the whole sequence where you've got Natasha kind of showing pictures of her with the Obamas and everything is kind of meant to kind of illustrate that this is someone who considers herself incredibly liberal and kind of right on. And certainly Neubauer, you know, he's the founder of child psychiatry in America, did huge amounts of good for children in this country, but was involved in this one thing, which is, I think, even by the standards of the time, unethical. I think that Lawrence Wright is more of the opinion that there was a noble cause and they were trying to further human understanding, you know, and our knowledge of who we are in doing this experiment. My personal belief, and having studied psychology at university, is that there was that period in the 50s and 60s was kind of like the Wild West of psychology. You have things like the Milgram obedience experiments and the Stanford prison experiment later, where people are kind of pushing the envelope of this new science and what's possible. And I personally believe that there was a great deal of ego involved. You know, if you could solve, assuming you know they believe then, or get more clarity on the nature-nurture question, you would become one of the most famous psychologists in the world. And I personally believe that ego was a huge part of it.
It's easy to call this nature versus nurture. I think that simplifies it. I think it's nature and nurture. When you start thinking about what the scientists were looking into and becoming a parent yourself, do you start thinking differently about what influence your genetics have on a child and what the environment has on a child? Has it changed your thinking about what it means to be a parent?
Absolutely. I mean, in the 5 years it took me to make this film, I got engaged, married, and had a child. And having a child really, you know, really shaped the way that I saw this. I think going into it, like the psychologists actually themselves, I was very much from a kind of nurture perspective, that nurture is everything and children are like blank slates. But any of you who have children know that's rubbish. You know, you get a child and they have a personality right from the start. And when my son was born, it really confounded me. I think we've also discovered stuff since that's really made me think about the nature-nurture balance. You know, we changed our minds so much making this film. You could probably see it in the film, the way it kind of goes back and forward. But, for example, we discovered through the study notes that Eddie was adopted by another family before the Gallans. So he was adopted, and then it was a failed adoption. They gave him back, and then he was adopted. And you kind of wonder what kind of damage that would have done. So that's, you know, weights heavily on the nurture side. So it's something that I still think about all the time. I mean, I'm just about to have my second child, and I'm sure with her I'll do exactly the same thing.
And you'll realize how different your kids are regardless of what you do.